going to continue. We are continuing with this, the 8th chapter of The Whispering Mountain. The Seljuk of Rum is in the home of the Marquis of Malin, and he is listening to the Marquis try to get out of Bilk and Prigman what exactly they were up to.
You think so, do you? It is strange, is it not, that I have a letter here, in the same handwriting, awaiting the arrival of His Highness the Prince of Wales, which has not even been opened yet. How do you know what is in it? Shall I tell you what I think? The Marquis said menacingly. I think you are in league with this young boy, who is no doubt a seasoned thief. You bade him write the letters. You have him hidden away somewhere with the harp. No, Gaffer, you got it all wrong. And as well as coming to me with an impudent request for money you have not earned, you expected to make a handsome profit from the ransom as well. But you are wrong, my fine friends. Very, very wrong. I think you had better produce that harp without loss of time before I lose patience. It would be a pity if, by the time you agreed to remember where you have it hidden, you were unable to fetch it because you had not the use of your arms or legs. There was a sort of squawk from Prigman. But, your worship, we don't know where the blessed Bandor is. That's Ticklepinny's truth. A long, unpleasant silence followed. Then the Marquis said in a cold voice, Enough. You shall have till Wednesday to lay hands on it. Provided you bring it by then safely and securely, you will receive the same fee I promised before. Not that you deserve it, but if not, you need expect no money. I shall find you, wherever you are. I found you in London, did I not? Yes, Your Honour. Remember it, then. Now, get out of my sight. Garble, see these men leave the castle without delay. Oh, and Garble, send for Mr. Owen Hughes, the curator of the Pennygaff Museum, will you? And his grandson, too, if the boy is to be found. Also, make sure that 2 or 3 dungeons are empty by Wednesday. Be so good. And that the thumbscrews are oiled and so forth. Prigman let out a terrified whimper. Then the 2 men appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling, escorted by the impassive Garble. Bilk was heard to mutter, I told you it were puggle-headed to play May games with his lordship. Now you'll have to tell me where you put the Bandor. The Seljuk remained motionless, half screened by curtains, and they passed without observing him. Then he moved forward as if, having stepped aside for a moment to admire a fine pair of boar's tusks. He was just continuing on his way. At that moment the harassed major domo came hurrying along the hall in search of him, evidently horrified at the thought of a guest left to roam the castle unescorted. With a smile that almost curled his mustaches to his ears, the Seljuk allowed himself to be led into the presence of the Marquis, who was walking up and down a large apartment, languidly fanning himself. He did not look exactly ruffled, but there was a tightening about the corners of his fine, thin mouth, a yellow gleam in his eyes, and his long fingers held the golden parchment fan, as if, had it been a knife, they would gladly have stuck it into somebody. He was dressed very elegantly in velvet, black as night, but with a citron taffeta waistcoat. Looking stout and gaudy by comparison, the Seljuk advanced to meet him. My dear sir, it is most affable of you to grant me the treat of visiting your stately nest-dwelling domicile, and after such a short acquaintance, too. On the contrary, rejoined the Marquis, with equal politeness, it is kind of you, my dear Seljuk, to give me the pleasure of your company. Without it, I should have been sadly dull. For His Highness the Prince of Wales, who I am also expecting, seems to have been unaccountably delayed. After several more civilities, Lord Malin led his guest into a dining-room, which, like all the inhabited part of the castle, was furnished in black gold and velvet. A small but sumptuous repast had been laid out on an ebony dining table. And now, my dear sir, said Lord Malin presently, when they had eaten guinea-fowl glazed with honey, saffron rice, parsnips, pineapples, nectarines, and peaches, let us take our coffee into the library, and pray tell me how I can entertain you. Would you like to see my tigerfish, my golden orioles, or my reptile collection? It is small but choice. For instance, I have just acquired 2 tiger snakes, charming creatures, which are, as you know, reputed to have stronger venom than any other species. Thank you, replied the Seljuk, hurriedly gulping the coffee from his tiny gold dematas. But pray don't trouble. Put yourself out. Turn topsy-turvy on my account. Wild creatures do not tickle my fancy, not to spin a yarn or put too fine a point upon it. Indeed, we have rather too many of them in my homeland. No, what would really solace, cheer, rejoice, warm the cockles, drive dull care away, would be to see your lordship's collection of gold articles. Ah, yes, of course, Lord Malin said carelessly. You are quite an expert in gold, are you not? I was forgetting you had told me so at Pennygaff. Come then, by all means. And he led the way through his library, past long shelves of heavy gilt volumes, into another room furnished entirely with glass cases. These were filled with gold objects. Every conceivable thing that could be made from gold seemed to have its place there. Gold tools, gold weapons, ornaments, and utensils. There was a gold spinning wheel, a gold musket, even a gold dictionary with the words printed on sheets of gold leaf. The Marquis called for more candles, and when these were brought, the effect among all the treasures there was strangely magical. A kind of shimmer filled the room, as if the very air had become imbued with gold particles. Ah, how truly gladsome, pleasing, felicitous, exclaimed the Seljuk, and he strolled between the cases, looking very intently, first at one object, then at another. While he thus examined the exhibits, Lord Malin, in his turn, watched the Seljuk very sharply, concealing his scrutiny under the pretense of wariness. My dear host, what a store, what prizes you have, and so resplendently polished, and such a charmingly warm room. Oh, my servants attend to the polishing, Lord Malin said, gracefully stifling a yawn. And as for the warmth, I can claim no credit for that. It is natural. I have merely had pipes laid from Nant Agadau to my castle. They carry hot vapor underground from the Whispering Mountain, so I have a never-failing supply of heat. The pipes come up underneath the castle. Even my dungeons are warm. And he smiled benevolently, pouring the links of his gold snake chain from one hand to the other. Indeed, how very ingenious and deluxe, the Seljuk said absently. He was studying a set of gold fish-hooks. Tell me, pray, my amiable friend, where did you procure these? Strangely enough, they were picked up on the shore not far from here. Such gold articles are sometimes found on the shore hereabouts. It is thought that perhaps an old treasure ship may lie wrecked somewhere off our coast. Ah, so, and this gold flute, I had it from an old lady in Nantagadu. She had inherited it from her father, who always declared he had picked it up in a quarry on the side of Fig Hat Ben. More probably he stole it. There were golden cymbals, too, and a small gold trumpet. And do you have a harp? The Seljuk inquired, glancing about the room. No, not at present, Lord Malin answered after a slight pause. Are you interested in harps? It might be easiest to tell from a harp, the Seljuk murmured, half to himself, peering closely at a gold kettle. He added, I recall some legend of a gold harp told to me by a friend of mine, a Brother Ianto. Lord Malin stared, as if his gold-linked toy had turned into a tiger snake and bitten him. His eyes dilated. Brother Ianto? You know Brother Ianto, of the order of St. Denadog. Indeed, yes. Puffing a little, the Seljuk leaned forward to examine a gold bridle. If it were not for the good brother, I should now be demised, bumped off dead as a doornail, my dear sir. I have much cause to be obliged to Brother Ianto. Last year he was so obliging as to pull me out of the far-distant Oxus River. Oh, last year. Lord Malin's excitement died down again as quickly as it had sprung up. So, pursued the Seljuk, chattily inspecting a pair of gold bellows, It perforce one of my concerns to meet and make contact, foregather with this lovable ecclesiastic as soon as the affairs of the kingdom of Rum permitted me to visit your country. Brother Ianto is in Wales? Now the Marquis's eyes fairly blazed. The Seljuk appeared mildly startled by the interest his words had excited. Dear me, yes. I had the pleasure of calling on him yesterday in his homely grotto. The Marquis turned and was tugging at a bell-pull, when Garble, ever alert for a summons, came silently in. His master said sharply, Garble, send somebody at once to search for a monk, Brother Ianto, who is to be found inhabiting a grotto. Where did you say you found him? He demanded of the Seljuk. At Nantagadao? Very well, don't delay. Garble, if there should be a harp with him, this is to be brought also. Yes, your lordship. The door closed softly behind Garble. What a kind thought to bring him here, the Seljuk said. Then I too shall have the pleasure of seeing my obliging preserver again. But Brother Ianto has no harp, I can assure you, pledge, credit, warrant, etc. If he had, I should have been greatly interested to see it. Oh, and why would that have been, my dear guest? Lord Malin was making an attempt to mask his excitement under an appearance of calm. He led the way into a smaller apartment, fitted up as a withdrawing room with sofas and tanks of tigerfish. The Marquis flung himself on a sofa and gestured to his visitor to do likewise. The Seljuk, giving a glance full of dislike at the tigerfish, turned his plump back on them and gazed instead at the 8-foot maidenhair fern. Why are you so interested in harps? What can you learn from a harp? Lord Malin repeated. Why, who made it, of course, naturally, to be sure, the Seljuk said simply. And what is that to a purpose? In order to explain that, I must needs relate you a portion of history, my dear host, ally, and patron. Some 3 years ago, a message in a bottle was picked up in a harbour at Sayre, which, as you may know, is the chief port of my country. Naturally, this message was brought to me as the Seljuk. And what did it say? It was written in a very ancient form of our Romish language. It said, Alas, alas, far from our warm homeland, we, the tribe of Yehamelech, languish in darkness and sorrow hidden beneath the Whispering Mountain. Indeed, commented the Marquis. And what did you understand from this mysterious message? Why, sir, it so happens that some generations ago a portion of my subjects were lost, mislaid, let slip. Naturally, I am most anxious to restore these poor creatures to their homeland. Since the message was picked up, I have sent out missions to investigate the mountains reported to be whispering in any parts of the world. Then, happening to encounter Brother Ianto last year and hearing from him of your renowned Fig Hat Ben and your famous legendary harp, I leapt to a conclusion. Smells a rat, resolved to leave no stone unturned, declared to visit the salubrious area myself as soon as affairs of state permitted. Lord Malin's eyes had begun to gleam again. But what has the harp to do with this tribe? I confess I am still somewhat in the dark, he inquired. The tribe of Yehamelech, my dear sir, were always famous among my people for their skill in gold mining and gold working. The chief among their skills in the ancient time was that of fashioning gold harps. For instance, we have in our National Museum of Rum a gold harp more than 2,000 years old. Lord Malin's eyes gleamed even brighter. You think the harp of Tiretu may have been made by your lost tribe? Perhaps. Maybe, possibly. Indeed, who knows? Certainly I am sorry to hear from the worthy curator of the Pennygaff Museum, on whom I had the honour to call, that his harp had just been stolen. The unfortunate gentleman seemed quite distraught indeed. Naturally, I had hoped that a sight of it might allay my doubts, scruples, waverings. Alack, what a slip twixt cup and lip! And there we will pause.